Again, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. So the talk is called GlucoseGyan, small changes, big differences. And it will become clear as we go why that is the case. I'm going to just start with showing you the quick agenda of what we want to cover over the next hour or so. We'll do a quick round of introductions of the people on the call that are going to be involved with the program. Really answer the question of what can gene clinics do for you. I know a lot of you have had conversations with various members of the team, and some of you may not have had, but we'll try and simplify for you what exactly we are trying to achieve and how it can help you. And then we'll really spend more time on Q&A, questions and answers that you have. And so we'll have us answering it from the gene clinic side, but we've also requested and invited 3 of our past participants who have gone through the program to join the meeting so they can talk about, how this program has helped them, what were some of the practical challenges that they had faced over time and stuff that, I hope you'll find helpful. And then we'll wrap up at the end quickly. Okay. So let me quickly start with the team of people who are going to be involved with the program. Our team is led by a group of very, very capable, very wonderful women, and they're all on the call. We have a lot of other people on the team who support these 8 members, but I'll just quickly walk you through them. We have Dr. Rashida Melankari on the call. She's a physician, lipidologist, and spends a lot of time. I think I would say her life has been dedicated in a big way to helping people with various lipid issues, heart issues, metabolic issues, and she joined the program to help figure out the medical angle. We also have Dr. Monica Shere, who is also a clinical consultant and is a doctor essentially. And then we have a group of dietitians. We have Sneha Raze, we have Shruti Kulkarni, Kalyani Sengaukar, Shivani Shah, and Swarda Tipnis, all of whom have for many years been dietitians in their own practices outside. But we were able to convince them to come join us to be a part of this program. And we have Dr. Nivedita Raut, who is sort of our overall program coordinator. She's the magician who keeps everything together. And many of you will have spoken to her or will be speaking to her at various points in time. So this is the primary team. They're all on the call, like I mentioned, and during the Q&A session, some of them will be answering questions that come up. All right, let me start with who we are. Gene Clinics is a group, is an effort and a division within GenePath Diagnostics. And I'll start with who GenePath is. GenePath is, we are actually a lab as well as an R&D center that has been around for more than 13 years. As a lab, as an R&D center, we have been working on creating diagnostic tests for various cancers, genetic disorders like thalassemia, infectious diseases like chikungunya, dengue, malaria, COVID. We've been doing this for a long time, and we do this not just in India, but also in other parts of the world. And we work very closely with patients, doctors, hospitals, and even labs across the world. The team at GenePath is a team of many PhDs, medical doctors, bioinformaticians, engineers, and dietitians. And this is a group that has been working together in creating and solving some of the most sort of difficult problems. For example, we just recently created a test to test for a genetic disorder called spinal muscular atrophy. And that is something that is being used by a whole country to screen 1.2 million babies that are born every year in that country. And so there are many more such tests in various areas that we have been working on. And about a year and a half or 2 years back almost, we decided that while diagnostics is a very important part of healthcare and is focused on people in the early stages of getting sick, late stages of getting sick, we found certain observations that things don't happen overnight. People don't get heart disease, people don't diabetes overnight. It happens over time. And so what if we could use all our expertise to look at people even before they get sick, look at early indicators that will tell us, this person is moving down a path that is not going to end well. Can we do something about it before they even get sick? And so gene clinics got into the preventive healthcare business. And really, it was built on the fundamental realization that science and technology has been progressing very rapidly. But very often it is complicated and difficult to understand for many of us. But what if you could take all these advances in science with the advent of these new sensors and monitoring tools that are coming up, and combine that with the insights of the doctors and these clinical dietitians that we have on board. And if you put all of this together, our goal was to come up with personalized solutions, not stuff that will apply the same thing to everyone, but for each person, if we understand through these sensors what's happening in their body, and through the insights of doctors and dietitians, how to make sense of that, we can come up with personalized solutions for each individual to help them figure out what to do differently before they get sick. And we have been doing this for a while now. We have now already used our approach on more than 400 individuals, again, across various countries. And what we've been able to successfully show is we helped participants get off stuff like if they were on statins that some people take for heart disease. We've been able to get them off statins. We've been able to help people manage and in many cases reverse diabetes, and in a big way help with sustainable weight loss. And we'll talk a lot about what that is, because weight loss, there are enough and more programs, but sustainable weight loss, that once you try it, it actually works and you don't have to keep going back to it, is what makes this unique. And we'll talk a lot about this in the coming slides. I hope you have a lot of questions that we will be able to answer either through the presentation or through the Q&A that comes after it. Okay. And the last point I'll make before we jump into things is, all of this started because many of us ourselves were diagnosed with heart disease, or were diabetic, or pre-diabetic, or had weight issues. Many of the people on the team that are going to be speaking today, we first tried to solve the problem for ourselves over the last 4 or 5 years. And when we realized that we could solve it successfully for ourselves, we then had many of our family members and friends get on the program, and they succeeded. Only then we opened it up to a larger group. This is a real mission for us. This is not something that we're doing because it's a fad or it's hype. We have done this on ourselves, we've done this on family and friends, and now we have a chance to show that it's been working on all of us. All right, so I'll start with this fundamental issue of metabolic health and how and why that is a big problem. So today, Indians represent 60% of heart disease cases globally. So out of every 100 people who are diagnosed with heart disease, 60 of them are Indians. This is a pandemic. I mean, we talk about COVID being a pandemic. This is a pandemic because not only are Indians especially vulnerable to this because of our genes and also because of our lifestyle and what we eat and all of that, but this is an issue that's growing at a rapid rate. It's not slowing down. It is gathering steam in the number of people who are getting it. Second, the reported numbers, and I'm going to say these are reported numbers because the actual numbers are going to be way higher than this. the reported number is only 25% of Indians are metabolically unhealthy. And what does metabolically unhealthy mean? It means that these people have issues with either their HbA1c or blood sugar is too high, or their cholesterol, or their blood pressure, or their waist circumference, or their fat content, or their triglycerides. If any of these things, which are early indicators of long-term disease, if these metabolic parameters are high or unhealthy, you know that there is some bad stuff that's going to happen later. And that bad stuff could be all those things I've listed on the screen, right? All the way from pre-diabetes to cancers and dementia. In the actual number is expected to be between 50 to 75% of Indians are metabolically unhealthy. As an example, the US, the number is 88%. 88% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. And so this is an issue worldwide, not just in India, but India is, bears a big burden of the overall cases of heart disease and metabolic health. And then the other observation, the BMI or body mass index, which is really a ratio of your height and weight. The healthy BMI is supposed to be between about 20 to 22. 22 or 23 to 25 is considered overweight. Above 25, the term used is obese. And the people with the BMI that is greater than 25 has gone from 20% of the population in India to 40% of the population just in the last 10 years. And there is no surprise why this is happening. It's not like suddenly we are, our genetics have changed. Our genetics are what they are. But our health, our lifestyle has changed. You know, the amount of processed food we eat, the amount of food that have all these additives, the amount of food that has a lot of sugar, and sugar doesn't mean only sugar, it could also mean carbs, that has increased in our diets. The general reduction in the type of exercises we do, the amount of stress, the quality of our sleep, lots of things have been changing as society gets more and more modernized. There's a downside, and that downside shows up in these various metrics that are on the screen. And finally, you know, many of us on this team have had these issues, and we were always very frustrated because there was no easy answer to any of this. The typical answer given is, you know, try this magical diet and you'll suddenly get better, or, you know, stop eating all the things that you love and you'll get better. And these fundamentally are not sustainable. And so we were definitely on the hunt for ourselves to do something different. And so, you know, one of the things that we saw of all the different things that cause issues, we found food is, of course, the biggest issue. And of course, exercise, sleep, and stress also play a role. But food, we realize, is the biggest driver of our health. And most diets, you know, fail to prevent these issues. And so that's why you get told things like, you know, hey, just follow a keto diet and you'll be fine. Or don't drink full fat milk, you know, drink skimmed milk. That's what's good for you. Count your calories. If you keep below 1100 calories, you know, you're fine. And on and on and on. We get advice from all over the place, and, you know, very often it's not really very effective. As you will see, that's something as simple as if you just counted your calories, it's not enough. It's not even close to enough to helping reduce weight or improve your health. And you'll soon see why. And then the third point really, what can gene clinics do for you? And I'll talk about it more, but at a high level, as I mentioned earlier, there are three parts we are trying to do. Is we're trying to get to be more scientific. And how do you get more scientific? Everybody claims they're scientific, but, you know, each of us is different. Our bodies are different. Our genes are different. And so when 5 different people eat the exact same thing, their bodies don't all behave the exact same way. They actually behave very differently. So just because something works for you doesn't mean it works for me. And because it works for me doesn't mean it works for my wife. And so how do we know what's happening inside our bodies? For that, you require some level of way to examine what's happening, and those are typically sensors. And a big part of our program is how we take the information from these sensors, these simple FDA approved sensors. So we're not trying to experiment with new things. We're taking things that have already been approved by a very, very conservative organization like the FDA in the US. And we put that on people to understand what's happening inside their body. Second, it needs to be personalized. Like I said, each of us is different. So we need to understand what that same food or exercise is doing to you than it's doing for me. And third is we focus heavily on how to make something sustainable. Because like I said, if I tell you to stop eating your favorite dessert, you probably will do it for 1 month or 3 months if you have like an amazing ability to regulate or self-control. But most of us, we enjoy what we eat. And so after 2-3 months, we stop making those changes or accepting those things, and we are back to square one. And so the three fundamental elements of what we are after is how do we use science and specific data? How do we personalize things for each individual? And how do we come up with solutions that are sustainable? And we have found a way in the program to actually integrate all three of these elements in a way that makes it easy for us to understand. Because, I can always spout some fancy language and make it sound really cool, but that's not really helpful. When I tried to explain this to my father, I couldn't use words like that were all super scientific. I had to, at the end of the day, simplify it so that he said, okay, I get it. Now I understand. And now because I understand, I'm more motivated to make the changes than because you told me some fancy words. And so through the presentation today, if we will do our best never to use any, great science terms or scientific terms, but if we do, please stop and ask what that means. And like I said, our own team, before we ever launched this, followed our own programs with great success. And then we got more people in, and you'll hear from a few people who have gone through the program. All right. Now, the only one slide I have about the science, and even this, it's going to be kept very simple. Okay. At the end of the day, what we have realized, and it's not just us, medicine and the scientific community have realized that it's what we eat is one of our biggest challenges. And within that, it is about what's happening inside our body, specifically what are called glucose spikes. And I'm going to explain this as to how this affects us, right? When any of us eat food, or we exercise, or if our sleep is not great, or if there is stress, but I'm going to take food because that's the biggest example. Whenever any of us eat food, as soon as the food goes into our body, the food typically is a combination of fat and carbs and sugars and proteins and fiber and all these things that we've always heard of. These various things, typically the carbs and the sugar, when it goes into our bloodstream, it becomes sugar. Even carbs, even the roti you eat and the rice you eat also eventually gets broken into glucose when it enters your body. When that happens, the amount of sugar in your body goes up, and that is your blood glucose that we are talking about. And so if you eat something that is heavy in carbs, like rice, or heavy in sugar, like ice cream, you will find that your blood sugar will spike. This image on the bottom right, you can see, right? Some of us may have at some point in our life pricked our finger, got a drop of blood, and then we look at the blood sugar. All of us have sometime in our life gone and done a blood test, and they give you one of the numbers they give you is your fasting blood sugar, fasting blood glucose levels. What that tells you is at that point in time, when you pricked your finger, what was the amount of blood glucose But that's a one-time thing. It's only telling you at that point what the amount of blood glucose is in your body. But let's say 10 minutes later, you ate a dosa or you ate idli, your blood glucose number will change. And so ideally, what you want to know is what's happening in your body at every point in time to understand what the different foods are doing inside your body. So let's go from there. You ate some food, your body saw a blood glucose increase. Now that's fine, because this blood glucose is supposed to do a certain amount of work. What it's supposed to do is, when that blood glucose goes up in your body, there is insulin. That insulin gets released. It takes all the blood glucose and puts it into your cells in your body so that your body can do work. It can breathe, it can walk, you can do all these things because the blood glucose is like fuel. It's the fuel to keep your body working, and all that is great. Okay. If there is extra fuel, because it's the blood glucose has been put into your cells to do the work, if there's some extra fuel left, the body says, okay, I have to do something with this. So what does it do? It goes and stores all this extra glucose into some storage in your body, into your muscles, into your liver, into your fat cells as triglycerides, so that it can be used later on. So later on in the day, when you have not got blood sugar and your body still needs to work, it will pull all of this from the storage and use it to power your body. So all this is working the way it should work. Now, the problem is, if you have too many spikes in your body because you're eating a lot of sugar, or maybe you're not eating too much sugar, but your body does not react to the same food like mine does, or mine does not react like my cousin's does, then what happens to all that extra glucose that's in your bloodstream? It keeps getting stored. And soon over time, if you have a lot of these spikes, you keep storing more and more, because a lot of it is not needed to power the body. Whatever was needed was used, but all this extra stuff gets stored. And over time, the triglycerides will build up, the amount of visceral fat will build up, and soon, and over many years, it will translate into things like pre-diabetes, then diabetes. At some point, you might jump straight to heart disease. A lot of cancers are actually fueled by the amount of sugar in your body. All this is known, but this has been known, and people have used this information to treat people once they get sick. But if all of this is known, and food is causing these issues, and so is exercise and all of that, then how about actually tracking this? Because if you don't, then all this extra glucose in your body eventually causes your insulin to say, I can't do this anymore. And that's called insulin resistance. As it starts giving up, your insulin resistance becomes worse and worse. And that's why you have all these issues. And so that is really the science. It's very simple. I mean, I've simplified it. Of course, inside the body, it's a lot more complicated, but at a very simple level, that's actually what's happening. And so if you can reduce your glucose spikes, you can really dramatically reduce your probability of getting any of these issues. And how does all of this show up? Here is a question that, since it's not interactive, I can't hear your answers, but try and answer this question for yourself. Is there a difference if you had a choice between eating a ripe mango and a raw mango? Do you think there's any difference in what's happening inside your body? Now, this answer will, of course, change between different people in terms of how much the difference is. But there will definitely be a difference, and one is better than the other. And if you are guessing one over the other, here is the answer. If you look at the top, it shows you the glucose response. That curve you see is the glucose response that ripe mango causes. Ideally, you want to stay in the dark green zone. If you start going above the dark green zone, then it's not a good thing. And so the more you go above the dark green zone, the worse it is. And so you can see that meter on the top right, ripe mango, at least for me is a red food. It's not good compared to raw mango. Okay, look at the bottom graph. The bottom graph is for raw mango. When I eat raw mango, the spike is much lower. Now, I would not have known that had I not eaten both those things and had this sensor on that told me at any given point in time what's happening to my blood sugar as I eat foods. Another one. Am I better off eating or adding jaggery or gur into my food, or am I better off adding white sugar? Again, take a guess. If I had to pick between one of the two, is one better than the other? Well, the surprising answer is actually both are equally bad. Many of us, and I used to definitely think this, I used to think, jaggery is better. So into any foods you ate, I would add jaggery instead of white sugar. But the reality is both are exactly the same. They are both made of the exact same stuff. And so the fundamental effect of each of them on the body is the same. This answer does not change too much from one person to the next. Both are equally bad for everybody. Next, wheat rotis. I'm not even talking about flour, right? Like wheat rotis, which are good, and multigrain rotis. Are they equally good for me? Because I'd always heard they're both very good. Don't eat white, eat wheat. And it turns out wheat is definitely better than white, but is not as good as multigrain roti. Okay, and these are just some examples of things that this program helps us understand, because if each of these times we made slightly different decisions on what we ate, over time we get better and better at controlling our blood glucose spikes, and it automatically translates into better insulin behavior and therefore lower chances of ever getting stuff like diabetes and heart disease. So what exactly does the program provide? Okay, are the following elements. Number one, you get, and I'll talk a little bit more about this on the following slide. I'll give you show you a short video to help explain how this works. But effectively, we provide, when you sign up for the program, a continuous glucose monitoring sensor. We call it a CGM, continuous glucose monitor. We provide this sensor, and what does is, instead of pricking your finger, which is quite a painful thing to do, and it only gives you one data point, this is something you put on your arm, and it gives you data points every few minutes for 2 weeks. Okay, and that way, at any given point in time, as you eat things, as you exercise, as you sleep, it shows you how your blood glucose levels are evolving over time. Second, we give you an app, an iPhone or Android, depending on whatever phone you have, to track your food, exercise, and blood glucose data. And again, I'm going to show you a short video to show you that, again, our objective is to keep these things really, really simple. Third, we provide access and guidance from our doctors and dietitians that I introduced earlier throughout the program, so that if you have any questions, they'll answer it. But more importantly, they will give you a framework on how to make sense of this data, so that at the end of the day, if we have questions like, I ate this, or, this caused an issue, what do I do about it? And I'll show you some pretty good examples of that. Really, the goal is, for the duration of the program, for each of us to be able to understand what's happening inside our body, how the different foods are causing an impact on us, then experimenting. So let's say I told you, or the sensor told you that, hey, every time you eat ice cream, there's a big spike. Now, okay, now you understand that, but what are you going to do about it? And so the next step is experiment. And our dietitians will guide you. Okay, you know what? You like ice cream. We are not going to ask you to stop eating ice cream. But what we will do is we'll say, hey, instead of eating the ice cream by itself, eat it with the following foods. Have it with maybe like a spinach sabji, and and then have some maybe paneer and then eat ice cream. Because scientifically, there is a good reason why the protein and the fat and the fiber from these things slows down the absorption of this sugar from the ice cream into your bloodstream, and it reduces the spike. So you keep experimenting with different foods that you are open to eating, that you like. And finally, you optimize. Now you can say, okay, let me change this order, try and finalize. So that by the end of the program, you have some very clear, easy to follow guidelines on things that are sustainable. Because if they're easy to follow, if they're simple, you will do them. You don't feel like you're sacrificing, for the rest of your life. I can never eat this. And as you will see, people who have gone through this, they have come and told us, all I did was focus on reducing my spikes, and automatically my A1C went down, my blood sugar levels went down, my weight dropped dramatically. Stop focusing on trying to lose weight, focus on reducing the spikes, the weight automatically gets lost, right? And our real goal is, for us to all be able to live long, healthy lives, but by being able to eat our favorite foods guilt-free, as long as we know how to complement them in the right way. That really is what this program does. And how we do it, like I said, is with sensors, with an app, and with dietitians. And I want to show you, because one of the most popular questions we get asked is, what is this sensor all about? And on the top right is a basic idea. And what it really is, and in fact, in the bottom right, you can see the size of the sensor. That small circular thing is the sensor. I'm going to show you a video of how to put it on and all of that, but that's the size. You put it on at the back of your arm. It's pretty small. You can take a shower, you can run, you can do everything. I play sports, I do everything with it on. It's on for 2 weeks. At the end of 2 weeks, it comes off, but everything we needed to learn about your body so that the doctors and dietitians can guide you, we've got during those 2 weeks. And then you just use the phone to scan the sensor whenever you want to know the readings. And really the sensor, all it does is it does not go all the way into your bloodstream. It has this, if you can see my cursor, it has this small element that only takes it into your skin. It does not take it all the way into your bloodstream. It just goes into your skin. It's pretty pain-free. I have almost always have it on, not because I'm diabetic or I have anything. It's because I find it very, very helpful. But for most of the people, it's not something you have to put on all the time. It's once for 2 weeks. It goes on into the skin layer, and from there it measures whatever it needs to measure. And here is a video.
Self-installing your CGM sensor is as simple as 1, 2, 3. It's painless and takes only a few seconds. Place the sensor applicator into the open sensor pack and push down on it. Place the applicator on your arm and push down firmly until the sensor is in place. To activate your sensor, open the Gene Clinics app, press the blue plus icon, select Scan Sensor, and hold the rear of your NFC-enabled phone an inch away from the sensor until you hear a sound. Your CGM sensor is now activated. You will be able to scan it to view your glucose levels after a couple of hours. This time is required for the sensor to settle down and begin to generate accurate glucose values. When you're ready to install your CGM, we'll be pleased to walk you through the process over a video call.
And so that's really what it is. You put it onto your arm, you press it, it's got a spring, it puts it on, and you're done. And like the video showed, you can scan it as often as you want through the day once you've activated it. And it's all, you do it all yourself. But if anybody ever has any questions, concerns, hey, can you walk me through it? We're happy to walk you through it over a call. So it's a couple of minutes and we are done. So that's the sensor part. And then there's the app, and the app is used to log your foods. So in the morning you have breakfast or you have lunch, you can log it through the app. You can take photographs, you can pick from options, like if you said poha, and all of that will be explained in this next short video.
Open the app, click the blue plus icon, select Add Meal, enter the right date, time and meal name such as breakfast, lunch, dinner or a snack. Type the name of the food you want to log. Click the search button. In most instances, the first exact match that is returned will likely be the one that you're looking for. If you don't see an exact match, pick the item which is closest in description to the food you want to log. Select the correct unit measure. If you don't see the unit measure that you were expecting, go back to the food search menu results and select the item with the unit measure you prefer. Enter the number of servings, click Save Meal. That's it, you're done. You can also add a meal by recording a verbal description. Click on the blue Tap to Record button. After saving the recording, you will also be able to add a photograph of the food. We're only a call away if you have any questions. Good luck.
So again, the objective as time goes by is for us to make it simpler and simpler so that you have to do very little, but the amount of information we can gather and hence provide the right guidance is really what the focus is. Okay. And so really what we want to be able to do is start letting you be able to get your own insights on foods you care about. Cooked beetroot versus raw beetroot. What is the difference going to be? I love gulab jamuns. And of course, I know what happens when I eat 2 of them. But if I paired it up with a egg curry and a half bowl of rice and then had 1 gulab jamun, that way I'm still eating what I like, but I pair it up correctly, it's much, much lower. Right? Similarly, oats with honey or sugar versus oats with nuts or seeds. If I use nuts or seeds versus honey or sugar, the difference is pretty dramatic. A corn sandwich with potato chips versus a vegetable paneer sandwich, big difference. And so on and so forth. And so, I mean, there are hundreds of experiments you can do, and you can do the ones you like. Our coaches will make sense of them. But over time, if we keep choosing the better option, our insulin resistance just keeps dropping. Yeah. And so we have various programs. I'm going to run through them relatively quickly so that we can really get to Q&A. I'm sure there are questions that you guys have. And so there are 3 primary programs. We have more, but there are 3 primary ones. One is a 2-week program. And it's really for us to be able to understand what's happening inside our body. In this 2-week program, we send you the sensor, you put it on, we have a session with a doctor, we have 2 coaching sessions with a clinical dietitian, and at the end of 2 weeks, you will get to know what's happening, what caused what amount of stuff. And for some people, that may be enough. They'll say, you know what, I understand, I'll accordingly change how I eat certain foods. There's a longer term 3-month weight loss program, which is, has 7 coaching sessions. It has still has the sensor, it has the app. The additional thing we do over here is we do a test before and after, so that not do we help you see how much weight loss you had, but also it should impact a lot of your other metrics as well, all your other metabolic markers, like potentially your HbA1c or your triglycerides and so on. And then we have the diabetes prevention and diabetes management program. This is very similar to the weight loss program, except that over here, there are 6 coaching sessions with a dietitian instead of 7, but you have an extra CGM session. So you have 14 days at the beginning of the program and 14 days at the end of the program for us to be able to see whether your blood glucose level and your HbA1c has improved, because that is one of the key drivers of what we are trying to look for in diabetes prevention. And, for those who are interested in moving forward with this, there are very easy ways to do it. You send us a WhatsApp message, register on our website, or email us. And we'll send you all this information so you don't have to, sit writing any of this down. But it's pretty easy. I want to also welcome three of our past participants. We have Mangesh on the call, we have Prakalp on the call, and we have Mohit also on the call. They have all had success with the program. They're among the 400 or so people who have had success with the program. And we asked them whether they would be willing to speak and answer questions for anybody who they might be able to better answer it based on their experience. So while we have them on the call, maybe we can start the Q&A. I will quickly go through it. We have quite a few questions, which is great. So what is the new normal for the HbA1c parameter? This is from Unmesh. I get to read that the number keeps changing every year. I know it should be less than 6, but now several articles that I've read mentioned even a reading of 7 is fine. So this is actually a great question because one of the challenges with this HbA1c is that while this shows up in all our blood tests and this is the parameter people use to determine whether it's healthy or not healthy, the challenge with this is HbA1c is a 90-day average of your blood glucose levels. And so I can get the same average if I have a lot of spikes or I have very few spikes. My average can still be the same. And because it is fundamentally, it is not the average that causes issues. It is the spikes, as we have described in the earlier part of this conversation. The problem with interpreting an average is very hard, and that's why these numbers keep changing. But if you really want to address this, forget HbA1c as a primary parameter. It's an important secondary parameter because that's still the language that people talk. But the way that our doctors, and I'm happy to have Rashida also jump in. Rashida, please, if you have anything else to add as the doctor on staff. But the glucose spikes are what one has to keep under control. The numbers that are still spoken about for HbA1c are, anything less than 5.6, you are fine. 5.6, 5.7 to 6.4 are considered pre-diabetic. 6.5 and higher are considered diabetic. But because of these points that I just made, these borders are a little bit fuzzy. And all we have to focus on is keep the number of spikes low. And if you can keep the number of spikes low, and we have our own scoring mechanism for that you will see in the app. But if you can keep your spikes lower and lower and lower, over time, you can flatten it as much as possible. That's really what we're after.
Yes, so adding to what Mitchell already said, this question I think comes because the criteria had changed, where they said that HbA1c around 7 is good. In Indians, it is not good enough. As Nikhil said, HbA1c is not an important criteria. It's all about your glycemic variability and the glucose fluctuations which you go throughout in a day. A person can have an HbA1c of say 6.5, but the person can still have a lot of glucose variability, and that is not good. And adding to that, all of us always thought that it was pre-diabetes, which later on goes on to move on to diabetes. But remember, there is a phase of glucose variation which starts a number of years, nearly a decade, even before pre-diabetes, where your HbA1c could just be around 5, 5.3, 5.4, and you could still be on the track to develop pre-diabetes and diabetes later on. So the way to look at all this is a continuous glucose monitoring technique, because then you can see actually the glucose variations, and that can be targeted and looked at. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you, Rashida. Unmesh, please, any further questions, just feel free to just shoot us a message, or we can do an offline call with the team.
So is there an email address where we can send you our queries, or is there a WhatsApp number where we can send you the queries? I mean, any of this media will be good enough for, at least I can ask you those questions. I've already asked
Absolutely.
you some questions in this chat,
Yeah.
but it's not for everyone. I've been message to you, but that's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
if you can share a number or an email ID or a WhatsApp number, I can put in my questions over there.
Yeah, so I'm just going to keep this screen up. We're, like I said, we're also going to send all those who have registered. We already have your email addresses because you registered. So we will be sending you an email with this information. But if anybody just wants to note it down right now, here it is. Yeah. Okay. I know there are a lot of questions, so I'll try and address as many of them as possible. So the sensors, I think this is from Bala. From the sensors, today it's a continuous glucose monitoring sensor. And the reason we chose that sensor, because we actually experimented with a lot of different sensors. But as science has shown us, it is really, if you can keep the blood glucose levels under control, that is what causes a lot of other issues. So there's this concept of leading indicators and lagging indicators. Blood glucose levels are a good leading indicator. They are a good sign of all the other parameters like triglycerides, like cholesterol. When we go for our annual blood test, it tells you your cholesterol levels, it tells you your HbA1c levels, it tells you your triglyceride levels. But those are what I call lagging indicators. That will tell you you already have an issue. But blood glucose will tell you you're on your way to have an issue. And so we want to track that data. That is a leading indicator of things that will happen later. And then use the lagging indicators as a test afterwards to see, hey, are the changes we are making helping with those lagging indicators? Yeah. Are you recommending any herbal or medicinal supplements for weight loss? In fact, I'll let Sneha answer the question, because as a coach, she's the one who, along with the rest of our coaches, provide what their recommendations are. Sneha?
Could you please repeat the question?
Are we recommending any herbal or medicinal supplements for weight loss?
No, the straight answer is no. We do not recommend any herbal or medicinal supplements. There are functional foods like methi, or there could be seeds that we could add as a part of good fats, but no herbal medications that we would be prescribing as a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, our fundamental view is just the foods we are already used to eating, changing the order, putting the right complementary food is what really is good enough. You don't have to necessarily go to anything more than that. Natural things are good enough. Okay. All right. Anika has a question. Usually carbs are blamed for causing spikes. Is it true in everyone's case? Yes, carbs cause a spike for everybody. Sugars cause a spike for everybody. But the difference is, for some people, that same amount of carb will cause a much larger spike. And for some other person, that same food will still cause a spike, but a smaller spike. And this is a function of, some of us were genetically lucky and some of us were not. And it's hard to say who is who. So yeah, the answer is yes, it causes everyone spike, but the amount is different. And is there any age criteria for wearing a CGM? The FDA recommends, the US FDA recommends, because this is an FDA approved device, that the one that we use, that you have to be above 18 to wear it. Now, kids with type 1 diabetes wear it at a younger age, but they recommend it for anybody who does not have type 1 diabetes to wear it from age 18 and higher. Okay. Do you recommend, this is from Sonali, do you recommend intermittent fasting if we eat fewer times and the spikes may be limited? This is actually a very good question, because there is a lot of interesting myths floating around about intermittent fasting. In general, intermittent fasting is good, but if it's not done correctly, it can have worse issues than having it. And one of the big things is intermittent fasting, because you're not eating for 18 hours of the day. And for the 6 hours when you eat, your body is already craving food. And that time, for example, if you started with carbs you'll get a much bigger spike than if you ate, more often. And so intermittent fasting in general has its benefits, but there are lots of scenarios where some people might be better off eating more often, but smaller amounts and the right amounts. And in fact, one of our participants, Mangesh, who's on the call, I'm going to actually invite him to answer this question because he was someone who did it. Mangesh, if you're on, can you unmute and give your take on intermittent fasting?
Absolutely. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So when I took on this program, I had been doing intermittent fasting for about 6 months. And, it is challenging for anybody who's done it. But one of the things I realized when I had the CGM device on is that when I had my first meal after a very long break, I was seeing a huge spike in my sugars. And in fact, when I brought in the third meal, which I was avoiding, that is what I thought was right for me, my sugars were more in control through the day. And I was also able to lose weight, which had kind of become very difficult in spite of intermittent fasting for a very long period of time. So in my case, and I'm no expert in general, dietary processes, etc. But in my case, intermittent fasting was not working for me. That's what the CGM device helped me uncover and change my habits, which have been easier on me as well and have been healthier from a sugar perspective as well. So that's been my experience.
Great. Thank you, Mangesh. Can we take Jaggery around the year effectively? And the answer is, you've seen Jaggery has its issues. It's as good as eating white sugar. But again, the question is, how much of it do you put and what else do you eat with it? Because I think the real trick in all of this is how do we combine things together? What foods do we combine that reduce the impact of the bad foods that are causing the spikes? Can we complement it with the good foods that reduce that spike? And so I would say that's sort of the simple answer. The more complicated answer, I'm sure one of our dietitians and coaches can provide, in a more longer conversation. Multigrain roti versus whole wheat roti, would it be the same for everyone or could it vary from person to person? In general, one should be better than the other, but having said that, the person to person variability is definitely very high. And so anything that we show over here, we absolutely always recommend put on your own CGM, see what your conclusions are, because they could be different. Okay. We spoke about that. So can you please tell us generally healthy combos of food to eat at a time? Gulab jamun plus egg curry rice. I mean, again, I can definitely give you a few examples, Rashmi. But the thing is, I saw in my own household, what worked for me didn't work for my wife. Those same combinations didn't work. And what worked for my wife didn't necessarily work for our kids. And so I'll give you examples. I love ice cream. Okay. I mean, when I first found out that I had to stop eating before we started this program on ourselves, I was like very dejected that I had to stop ice cream. I mean, it was a source of great pain for me. But once I put on the CGM, what I realized in my is a spinach salad plus paneer masala and then ice cream. That combination dropped my spike quite dramatically. That was one of my favorite examples because it really changed the level of excitement I had about doing this, because I finally found something that worked. Now, unfortunately for me, even gulab jamun is my favorite, and so are donuts, and all the bad things that one should not eat too much of were all my favorites. And all of those things I now do less of, but I have not given up on them. I just have figured out, in my case, what to combine with what. And so I would say that, I'll give another example. I love eating yogurt. And yogurt is good, so that's not a bad thing, right? But I find yogurt to be a little bit bland, or another way of saying it, it's not very sweet, and I want it to be sweet. So earlier I used to add honey, but honey is a big killer in my case, right? It causes huge spikes. But I wanted to sweeten the yogurt, and so I realized that if I put blueberries gave me that slight amount of sweetness that I wanted, and blueberries were amazingly good for me in terms of the sugar spikes. And so I've created my own database of foods that work for me, the combinations that work for me, and I have hundreds of those combinations. But like I said, many of them may or may not be relevant to you. When on diabetic medication, Unmesh, again, I'll let Rashida answer this question offline, because there are some very good questions you have that we'll be able to answer offline.
Nikhil, for this question, let Prakalpa share her experience, because when she had joined the program, she was on intermittent fasting.
Perfect.
And when she got on this, it really helped her. Prakalpa,
Yeah,
will you
no,
share your
Prakalpa.
experience?
Yes, most certainly, except I missed the question. If you don't mind repeating the question.
So Prakalpa, the question is, when on diabetic medication, is intermittent fasting advisable?
Prakalpa, when you initiated the program, remember you were on intermittent fasting, and then
That's right. Yeah. So to be perfectly honest, I did not consult my diabetologist before getting into intermittent fasting. It was more of a fad thing. Everybody around me was getting results for weight loss. So I joined on it, and I was monitoring my sugars with a normal glucometer and making sure that there are no absurd readings that I was getting. So I did the program on my own, but then I very soon realized that by monitoring my sugar levels, which I did through CGM, I was able to get my weight down as well as HbA1c down in a course of 2 to 3 weeks. So my advice would be, don't get on these programs without consulting the correct doctors, because like Nikhil said earlier, we don't know what those spikes are and what they do to your overall, behavior of the body. And again, weight loss I did not achieve with intermittent in 3 months, but I did achieve with CGM in 2 weeks. So that was a big bonus for me.
So here's a confusing, here's the confusion again, Nikhil. Now, when I speak to my diabetologist, he says, do not mix up intermittent fasting if you are on medication. So now he is my diabetologist for a long time. So do you recommend me to again come to you and ask you these questions depending on my body parameters? Or, I mean, who do we finally...
So that's a great question. That's a great question. Yeah, I'll tell you, I mean, our view is actually relatively straightforward, which is, when you get confusing advice, which many of us often do, you get mixed advice, right? I think the question we ask ourselves is, based on what data is this being told? And I'll give you a few examples to make this point, because this is, at the end of the day, a practical question. Okay, we had a number of people who had diabetes, but let me talk about the diabetics. Okay, and they all have their diabetologists, and they all have been at it for a while, 5, 10, 15, 20 years in diabetics, right? And so they are used to taking their insulin shots at a certain time of the day. They are used to following whatever advice they have been getting. And every diabetologist is doing their best. It's not like they are not doing their best. They're giving their best advice that they can give. But at the end of the day, if we all fundamentally believe that our bodies are different from each other, and I take 5 different people with diabetes, if I am a diabetologist and I have 5 people standing in front of me, all of whom are diabetic, what rationale am I going to use to give these 5 different people 5 different answers? I have no rationale, because unless I have their CGM data, okay, I will tell everybody, hey, you know what? Typically take your insulin shot right after dinner, or whatever my advice is. But what we have seen is, when people put on the CGM and we looked at the data, the answer actually as to when to take the diabetes shot was at very different points in the day for them, right? And so to me, the real point is this. What we are trying to do is we are trying to show you, look, once the CGM was on, this is what your data looked like. Based on this data, we are telling you what makes the most sense, but don't take our word for it. Let's say we told you, combine this food with this food. You try it and let the CGM guide you and tell you whether that was good or that worked or that didn't work. Now you take that same data back to your diabetologist and show them that data. My bet, because we have seen this happen enough number of times, when you take that data of what's happening inside you to your diabetologist answer may change, because now they have more information on which to give you feedback on. Right? Does that make sense, Unmesh? Because at the end of the day, we are otherwise operating in the dark. If you talk to any of our dietitians, I was mentioning earlier, they were all doing their own practices before this. Okay. Right. And when they did their own practices, many of them had no access to a CGM. And so if you ask them, how has their advice to their participants changed between the two scenarios? It's very different. Correct. Right? And the exact same thing applies to diabetologists, anybody else, right? And so that to me is the way to do it, is do the program, take the feedback we're giving you, but take it to your diabetologist and tell them, hey, based on this data, that's what these people are saying. Do you agree? Do you not agree? My guess is at that point in time, the answers will start converging to the same.
Okay, got it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. One other related thing I want to address, and I know we're running over time, and so if anybody needs to drop off, I'm sorry. You please, we don't want to keep you on, but if you find these questions at least intriguing, we are happy to keep going for some more time. Which is, people have asked us this question: hey, I heard a CGM is not accurate, because there's always stuff on Google that will give you all types of answers, and I want to be able to explain this. Number one, the CGM, like I said, the one that we use is an FDA approved device. There is no way an FDA is going to approve any device that is fundamentally not accurate, because a lot of diabetics' lives are at stake. And so there is no accuracy issue, okay, fundamental accuracy issue. However, there's a different thing that's going on. The CGM, like I mentioned, goes into the skin level, okay? It does not go into the bloodstream, okay? What is the implication of that? The implication of that is, when you eat food, first, your glucose levels in your blood go up. And then eventually it makes its way into this interstitial skin layer. And so if you were to prick your finger and draw blood, and you looked at the blood glucose readings from that, and at the exact same point in time, you looked at the data from the CGM, there will be an offset, there'll be a delta, there'll be a difference between the two, because in the blood, that blood sugar level has already gone up. But 20 minutes later, it will show up in your CGM, that same reading. And so there is a time lag. It's not an accuracy issue, it's a time lag issue. But because we fundamentally know how to interpret a CGM, we know if you ate now, 20 minutes later, you will see that blood glucose readings. And so that's good enough for us to know, okay, this food caused this issue. So let's now pair this food with something else. And next time you do it, again, let's look at what happens. And that should be lower. Okay. How to manage insulin spikes during workout and sleep. So the interesting thing is, if you don't sleep well, you will find that the next day your body behaves differently, right? You feel it, I didn't sleep well, but actually it'll also show up in your CGM data. Similarly, if you work out has very different implications to your blood glucose levels. And that's all fine. Don't worry too much about it. We have the coaches who will explain all of this. We have doctors who will explain all of this. At a high level, everything that we do causes an issue, or not an issue, but a spike or a no spike. How to interpret all of that is something that we will be able to explain. And Avanti, since you're a nutritionist, you, I'm sure, have a lot more knowledge about many of these things. But happy to have a chat offline with you about this, because we have some very interesting data on how, bicycling versus playing football, they're both workout, right? In some sense, they're both exercise, but they have almost the opposite effects on our blood glucose levels. And that itself is a deeper topic. So we'll have that conversation offline, Avanti. Okay. Can we take the medicine along with this program? Absolutely. Right. We are not going to tell you stop taking your medication. You should do everything your doctor is telling you to do. But what you will find is as you do this program, over time, you will find that your metrics are getting better and better to the point where one day your doctor will tell you potentially stop your medication. Okay. Will this program completely reverse diabetes? We have had people, in fact, recently we had a participant who called us to, this participant was in the US, and he had been for many years a diabetic. And he had been so frustrated because he had tried every program that is known and nothing worked. About a year back, he got onto our program, and he has come back just last week, in fact, and told us that his doctor has stopped all his primary medication because this program actually reversed it. And so have we been able to do it? Yes. But I think it comes down to how well each of us can, take this practical advice and make it a part of our lifestyle. This individual who reversed it was on our 3-month program. And then after the 3 months, he loved the relationship that he had built with his coach, with his dietitian so much that he said, look, now I know what to do, but I just want to stay on track. And so he just continued on the program. But I think for each person, they can decide how they want to go about it. But the answer is yes, it does help completely reverse diabetes. Okay. How is this different from Pramod Tripathi and Dikshit diet? I hope by now you've got a better sense for that question, Aarti. But at a high level, we are not saying eat a keto diet or eat only this or never eat that. Our fundamental view is it's not about don't eat this and always eat this. It is about find that right combination of foods that you are comfortable with eating. And we have to help you figure out, like, for example, if I told you, hey, from tomorrow, have dosa every day. I'm just making up a random example. You might say, look, I never eat dosa. But just for this program, if I have to eat dosa, okay, I'll eat it, but I'm not going to sustain that. And so our goal is you tell us what you're comfortable eating, and we'll tell you, okay, if that's what you're comfortable eating, let's combine these things. This is the fundamental difference between the approach we take and what most other people take. And we've had a lot of people who have been on these other diets who have told us this. That's why we know practically what the differences are. Okay. I know we have lost Mohit. I would have loved for him to answer a few questions, but I'm just going to, I know we are well over time, so I'm going to try and go through quick things. I think that answered most of the questions, but I think again, just the end, should we see a diabetologist? Absolutely. I think you should. If you're seeing them, don't stop. What I would say is take the data that you're getting from here, take the advice we are giving you, show them all of that. Okay, say this was the data that was happening in my body. This is what was recommended. Now, what do you think? And you will find that their answers will dramatically change because now they also see the same data we see. And the observation we have had is most diabetologists, if they see the same data, they reach the same conclusions. Yeah. If there is any other quick question that I can answer, I'm happy to. If not, I hope this was helpful. Again, I'm going to just put up the contact information, and and we'll also, like I said, send you a message. And I really hope that, because all of us have seen the differences and made changes that we have been able to live with, I hope you get a chance to try it out and see the same differences that we saw. Okay. Thank you.